All right, everyone, welcome to this week's Tech Threads interview. Today, I'm talking with Luke Mangum, who is a product manager at Entrata. Um, I've just barely known Luke a little bit. I've seen his profile, and I think he has a lot of great insights that I want to share with you all. And I think it'd be really valuable. Before I get started, I'm just going to pass it off to Luke to kind of share a little bit about who he is, give his brief description of kind of what he's been doing and what he's been working on. So, Luke, take it away.
Thanks, Max. Yeah, I'm Luke Mangum. I'm the product manager at Entrata. We do software for, I guess where I currently am. I'm in Entrata. We do software for property management companies, mainly for the multifamily housing industry, where you have like big apartment complexes. A little bit about me. I have been working in tech for almost 10 years, and the majority of that has been in product. I've been in product for um, just about 7 years. And so most of my experience comes from business to business instead of direct to customer. I usually work. Most of my experience again is yeah, business to business is where I come from. So we in our market, we like to partner with really big customers. We've got some clients who are international, and so um, we like to partner with big people who are in the industry who know what they're doing. So it's really a wealth of user knowledge, which I know we're talking about today. But it's a little bit easier in business to business to actually find who you actually want to target.
Definitely. And I think this is a great insight and perspective. I've talked in the past with people who do more business to consumer. So this business to business aspect is awesome. And I'm really excited to hear kind of your user research tips, kind of what you've learned, just to give kind of like an outline for everyone who's listening on what I plan to go over on today with Luke. I'll touch really briefly on gathering user research and also using it. And then the bulk of this will be focused more on like common problems that PMs have when doing user research. And then Luke's going to share some great insights with us on kind of how to mitigate those, his experience working with those problems, and any advice that he has, being 7 years in product management in a business to business environment on how to, better make those decisions and use user research. So just to kind of start out with gathering user research, I know that user research is often like incorporated in the decision making. So like for you personally, how do you know when you've like gotten your user research, if you have enough to make a decision confidently? Or is there like any tips you have on like when that you have enough research to like go forward with some project?
Yeah. Uh, what we usually like to avoid, I'll start with what we avoid and then what we go for.
Yeah.
What we usually like to avoid is gutalitics, especially with those of us who've been in an industry for a long time. We come in with these predetermined notions of, well, we know the problems, we know exactly what needs to be built, but unless you actually have something with data, your opinions are just gutalitics. You don't necessarily know something until you actually go and validate it with either interviews or with actually getting data for the problems that you're trying to solve. So the I guess the biggest thing that I would say there is that when you sorry, let me transition a little bit. So when you know you have
Yeah,
enough, I
definitely.
think that was your question. So when
Hmm.
you know you have enough, that actually becomes a natural thing as you start working with the people on your team. So usually the cadence is you've got this question or you've received this feedback from a client, and then you go and research it. You actually go and maybe ask other clients and then look in the data of the software if you already have a product that's doing what they're asking about, seeing how people use it, and get the data behind user behavior, how many people are using it, adoption versus people who are actually really digging down and using all of the features that you're talking about. And then um, yeah, once you have that information, you kind of come to your team with a problem that you're trying to solve, and then you show your team this is the information we have. And then once you're at that point, it really gets hashed out where with your team, with UX, with engineering. If you don't have the right questions solved, there's kind of like that safety net of your team when you go and talk to them
Right.
to know that you actually have enough. But I would say have some at least some basic metrics before you take something to your team. Have some user stories before you take it to your team of somebody actually describing the problem that they're having, and have the context of why you need to solve that problem before you even start discussing a solution.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And you as a leader of like product managers as a product team, how do you help people in your team avoid? I think you use the word gutalitics, which I've never heard that, but it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. That's like the word I'm gonna start using now when I talk about this. But how do you help your team avoid doing that? Because I know for a lot of early PMs, that's like a big problem they have, trying to like a lot of times they'll go into like user interviews or user research trying to validate this assumption that they have rather than just taking in all the information like you should and then like making your decision after. How do you help your team, avoid that problem?
Mm. It really starts with the product manager. You are the voice of the customer. That's part of your job
Mhm.
description is you are the one who brings the problem to be solved to your team. That's the cool thing about cool and frustrating thing about being a product manager is that you bring the problem to the table, but you're not necessarily the one who creates the solution. Like it's okay if you don't have the answers. You're the one who needs to gather the problem. But that's the I guess to answer your question a little bit more specifically, um, it's for people who are newer product managers who are just starting out. It's a muscle. Like you gotta challenge yourself with, do I actually know this? Do I have data to back it up? Have I talked to customers to form this opinion? Or is this something that I've just observed that I'm really passionate about? Those are the ones that are really hard to get over when you're really, really passionate about a specific solution or a specific problem, but you don't have anything to back it up. So it's a muscle that you have to flex over and over until you're good at it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a, one of the other people that I've talked to about that says the exact same thing. He says it's more of like a science and an art in a way. You got to just like, you'll know once you kind of use that muscle. I know also one problem that a lot of people have is introducing biases in these research, kind of like with these gut reactions, kind of things that we think or we're really passionate about, like you said. Do you have any ways that you help yourself or your team to get pure user data, try to avoid as many biases as possible? Or are there any like safeguards that you put into place to kind of mitigate getting some biased data or some biased like reactions from some of the people on your team?
Yeah, 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 there are some of the exercises that we do or try to look at it from every angle. So most, especially with business to business type software, you've got a person, usually have a company or a client or a user who they've got a specific problem and they've usually thought about it enough that they're actually telling you a solution. They're not even telling you a problem. So when you look into that problem and try to validate your and try to remove your bias, you have to start looking at it with different perspectives. So you
Mm.
can take into account that this person is asking for it because they're in this specific job, understand their role, why are they asking for this? But then you might need to think about maybe their manager or their real regional manager, or if it's some type of hierarchical system. Wow, that's a difficult word. Tiered system. We're going to say that tiered system where
Yeah.
they're actually reporting up to somebody. So it's really looking at it with different perspectives and making sure that you're looking at the problem, not just from how you want to look at it, but make sure that everybody's vision and opinion is valued and that you're looking at it from different perspectives.
I love that. Just the different perspectives. I think because I think each perspective you look at provides a different insight to the user or to the problem or to like the solution that maybe your users are hinting at. And so I think having that full comprehensive thing is something a lot of people can, especially early PMs, can really, focus on to get that better perspective. Um, Kind of like talking about more about using user research. Have you ever had a situation where the user research suggests like a sort of pivot in the product that you've been working on? How do you like go about transitioning? Say you go to your users, you like have been working on this for a while, you go to your users and it's like, hey, like we need to pivot this, change something up. How do you help yourself and your team to kind of make that pivot without having like this remorse of like, oh, we put so much time into it, we thought this would work and it changes? Do you have any advice on kind of how to mitigate that pivot or facilitate that pivot in a better way for you and your team?
Yeah. Prep, research, and do your due diligence before you even start building. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a really big thing, especially for product managers. Like most product managers are you're working off of like bonuses and how much you can actually raise the bottom line and how many users you can get on. And so if you're rushing things through and kind of pull the trigger maybe a little too early, it can lead to sunk costs where you've had your engineers working on something for so long that it's just kind of sunk cost when you could have been working on something else. So how you avoid that is doing your due diligence, doing your research, validating it with user testing even before you actually build anything. Like before you build anything, you can do prototypes and try to find beta users to test or even alpha users to try and test a solution before you even really put it into the software. You can make pretty screens through those design softwares out there that you can um, build a prototype without actually having the back end to it so that a user can go in
Right.
and see it and feel it. But it's really doing your due diligence before that. But really the main teacher, I'm passionate about this one too, because I've failed at this one.
Mhm.
That failure is probably the biggest teacher. Um, I remember one project where we just put in a ton of time and a ton of effort, and then the client realized that this actually isn't worth our money to pay you guys
Mm.
to build this anymore. So we were months down the line building this thing, and it turns out that this client had other priorities that were more important to them, and we could have found that out beforehand just by doing our research, but we didn't. And so that's definitely something I do in my due diligence, is making sure we have the right priorities, we have the right research done, and then before we build anything, we've got a clear path uh, to release.
Yeah. I feel like I totally feel that too. I've taken here at Cornell, I've taken some product design classes, which are very user centric, trying to figure out what the users want. And this class is kind of like based on you failing and learning from your failings. Like the whole first 2 weeks of class,
Yeah.
our professor who's worked in product at all sorts of companies, she's like, hey, like we're gonna, this is your like kind of niche area. Like we need to make a product to sell, like go design it. And so the first 2 weeks you're like going out, like coming up with all these cool solutions on how you want to like revolutionize something. And then like week 3 comes, you put in all this work. And she basically like hits you with the frying pan and says, hey, like now go do user research. And if you want to make your solution become like the actual project you work on, you have to have user validation for it. And so we like go and try to find this user research and it's like doesn't exist. Like these are just our ideas that we had. There's no like real like users who like actually want this and will use this. And so like all that work we put in those first 2 weeks is just like destroyed. Like it's gone.
Hmm.
And so like I definitely feel the frustration with that. But then again, like in the end of the day, it's all about the users. If they like it and they want it, that's what your job is as a PM to, make sure their voice is heard and kind of getting that done.
Hmm.
Using kind of like talking more about like product teams and having this like user centric kind of like pillar as your team's focus. How do you have any advice or any tips on how people out there can make their teams more user centric, or how you personally have tried to make your job and yourself and your teammates like more user centric?
Yes, yes. We On my team, we really try to put the client first, or our users first. There, I think even whether it's B2B or whether it's B2C, it's really important to have your client first. Like in the example you just gave, where you had this really cool solution, but nobody wanted it. I mean, there's the one of the truths about product is that you also have to be profitable. That you, if in order to build a solution and keep building it and keep growing it, people have to want it. And so, in order to focus on or build the right things, you have to focus on what people want. So, what we do on our team, um, honestly, it starts with me and being just focused on the user. And then every time we talk about a solution, every time we talk about a bug that pops up, it's just inherent in our way that we communicate is, how is this affecting the user? How is this affecting our clients? And so that's really what keeps us focused on the right things that need to be built at the right time, is by keeping that user focus in our all of our communication. It's not a step in our discovery, it's not a validation at the end of our build. It's constantly, um, what problems can we solve to make our users lives better? How can we build this UX so that it's actually easier and we can give our time back to the users to be with their families? How can we build this in a way that it's fast enough that we're actually giving people back their time instead of taking it? How can we make sure that when we're validating this, that we aren't creating new bugs um, that will create more problems for our clients? It's not a one-time thing, it's a constant thing where we always remind ourselves and call each other out on, okay, how is this going to affect the user? It's really just a mindset shift.
Definitely. I think that's the right way to go about it too. Having, if you do it the whole entire time, there's no lapses. You're always having the customer first. I know a lot of times too, because like you just mentioned before we started actually recording, that, right now is a big time
Mm,
to go like talk with stakeholders, executives, trying to align the business needs with like what the products need, and like profitability, like you mentioned, that's a very sticky road. And like some people often lose focus of the user trying to make things more profitable. Do you have any tips that you've heard, any advice or anything you practice when to like help the stakeholders understand more about the user when they're making their decisions? Or have you run into any problems where, stakeholders, like, they want profit at the cost of like user experience or like what the users actually want? Like, how do you mitigate those conversations and how do you help them understand better, the users?
Oh, gotcha. It's the same thing as prepping to talk with your engineering team. You just have to use a little bit different verbiage. Whereas if I went to my engineering team or with my UX guys or designers, I would go in and with the problem, and we can do this for our customers to make their lives better. And then by making it really smooth, uh, we can raise the adoption of the product and get them to use it more. If I go to talk to an executive about it, I have to talk to them about that first. Like we have these specific projects. I have my roadmap planned out. This is what I think we need to work on because we've found this problem and we're trying to solve it. And we see that this problem we can actually increase the number of users on our software because there's so many people who need this, and we validated it by knowing we tried it with a few first, and then we're going to bring more um, onto the platform. Other ways are market research and seeing what competitors are doing. Like if I've got a problem I'm passionate about and I tie it to this competitor is doing this thing, they're charging money for it. This is how much they're charging for it. We need to solve this problem, and we can help our users and get revenue for our company. So it's the same conversation. You're just different data points are weighted in each conversation.
Yeah, more kind of like a focus is different depending on who you're talking with. And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing too, at least for me with my internship experience, learning how to pivot that idea. You're talking about the same central idea, just from a different perspective with different focuses tailored to like what the person actually wants is like a skill. It's like an art. You kind of got to like, I liked your analogy with like the muscles. Like you got to like actually practice it and like figure out what they like, kind of how they want to be, handed this information. And if you do that, you can really influence the way a product runs and, the company overall with like the profits. Do you
Yeah.
have any with your time, and you've been for 7 years, you've transitioned from, a different role to product. Do you have any like, what do you think is the biggest like problem or thing that product managers do with regards to like user research that when you fixed it, it kind of like made a big difference in how you value user research?
I think we already talked about it a little bit, but it's coming in um, with opinions and solutions rather than doing research and presenting a problem. That's definitely one thing that I've seen with the young product managers or product managers who are just new to the job is we want to we want to solve things. I mean, part of product is we want to create solutions. We want to build things. We want to create really cool things. We want to create things that'll help our users. But the thing that people, at least that I've noticed in products, the place where we get caught is we want to build the solution that we already have in mind rather than relying on our team and building something better because we actually have so many different perspectives from your engineers, from UX, from product. When you all come together, you actually build a better software. You build a better solution, a better app, whatever you're building. It's better when you have multiple perspectives, but it's really, really easy for early product managers to jump in straight to the solution and say, we have to build this instead of focusing on what does the user need.
Right. And I think that's just one of those things, every young PM is going to do, every person transitioning is going to do it. But, with your advice, I think people who listen to this will mitigate that quicker. We'll get over that hump quicker to the more valuable things. Just kind of as we're wrapping up, do you have any advice that you'd like to give people out there when it comes to being a PM, user research that you think, is valuable that everybody should hear, either as a reminder, as like as a first time?
Yeah. Focus on the user. I know we've talked about that this
Mhm.
whole interview. The second is get organized. There are so many things that are going to pull your attention many different ways, so many ways that you have to communicate with clients, to your stakeholders, to executives. Get organized to get and document what you find, what you need, where you're going, even the things that you want to do. Write it all down, get it organized into a system. And then, I don't know, the last one is fail fast, but keep going. Like failure is part of learning. And it's probably
Yep.
the biggest way it, it's terrible that we have to fail in order to learn, but it's the best way for things to actually sink in and for us to remember next time that I'm not going to do something again, or there's a better way to do this. Fail fast and learn quickly. I think that's the last thing.
That's a great way to put it. I think Amazon, I don't know if they coined that term or if that was, their like big ideas, like fail fast. And it's like kind
Mhm.
of counterintuitive, but like you're right. Like failure, as sad as it is like the best teacher. And you make sure you don't make that same mistake twice. Well, Luke, I just want to thank you again as we kind of wrap up. We could talk for hours about product management and user research. We'll save that for maybe another clip or another video, but I really appreciate your expertise. I know there's a lot of valuable pieces in here that a lot of people should reevaluate in their product management careers and, to better use their user research. So thank you one more time again for all your expertise.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate it. Thank you.